Most interesting text that you've written in the past several years was the preface that you gave to a new Princeton University edition of Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative. One of the things you talked about in that, which I think is apropos of the current moment in conservative thought, is that you said in the early 1950s, when the conservative movement started getting cooking, that it was remarkably bookish. And there were people like T.S. Eliot, strains like that, Russell Kirk. And you said that that these were strains that were flavored by religion, nostalgia, and resistance to the permanent revolution of conditions in a capitalist market society. And you said that had Barry Goldwater been a reading man, he would have found these forms of conservative unintelligible, even repellent. Is Barry Goldwater the model for what you are now calling conservatism?
I want more Goldwaterism in the mix.
What are the benefits, or what are the strong suits of Goldwater that are missing in today's?
Well,
Republic?
it's the basic skepticism about state action.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's the Southwest open horizon, multicultural society. He's a great photographer, Barry, and he loved photographing Native Americans. And he lived among people of Hispanic origin who'd been there a lot longer than the Goldwaters had been. Goldwaters came from Poland, I think. And when they got to the Southwest, they were newcomers. So he had this kind of live and let live, open spaces, a lot of sunlight, just wonderful spirit in the Southwest that I happen to love. I want more of the Goldwater impulse.
And there's also an optimism.
Yeah,
right?
well, absolutely.
A friendliness and optimism.
Absolutely.
Because it was actually kind of stunning when you said earlier that you participate in technological innovation, or you at least recognize it. What at what point does that take over in terms of why are we still talking about government? Because as long as we can go on the internet and get whatever song we want, are we wasting our time by even focusing on government?
No, because the government can be an impediment to this. We want the government to get out of the way, and we want the government to do certain kinds of research that, because of the time horizons on the research, the private sector is not going to do. Bell Labs doesn't do it anymore. Used to, maybe it could, and maybe it should, but they're not going to.
You're in favor of, for instance, what you call basic scientific research.
Yes, I mean, I would double the NIH's budget. I'd spend more on certain things. But I visited Goldwater at his home several times. He built this home on a little bluff overlooking the valley where Phoenix is. And he said he built the home where he used to sleep at night. He'd ride his horse up and sleep at night in this little spot where his house was built. At that time, he said there were 100,000 people in the valley. Now we're approaching 4 million. Now this is a man who had to be comfortable with change and dynamism. As you know, I'm sure, the greatest hymn to capitalism ever written is in the Communist Manifesto, where Karl Marx says everything disappears into thin air. And that's the European conservatives have never come to terms with that. American conservatives have. We kind of like that.
And yet the Goldwater tendency has never really been the dominant one or the most successful one in the Republican Party. What's the opposite of Goldwaterism now? Who embodies that? And
I don't see. I don't think. Some people say, well, there's the establishment. I don't think there is a Republican establishment. The Republican establishment's death can be dated, for the fun of it, in 1966 when the New York Herald Tribune died. There was a time when they had their newspaper. That was the Republican establishment newspaper. The Republican establishment bank was Chase Manhattan. You had Nelson and David Rockefeller. They could get to the Goldwater Convention in San Francisco in '64 and conjure a rival nominee in Bill Scranton out of thin air. There's no Republican establishment anymore, which is good.
But there are countervailing forces and figures who don't have that kind of live and let live Southwestern ethos, who don't anymore have that kind of skepticism of government. What happened? Or why did those values become ascendant in conservatism?
Well, the conservatives who are in elective office are looking over their shoulder at a deeply conflicted electorate. And again, it's the cognitive dissonance. The American people, rhetorically, are Jeffersonians. Operationally, they're Hamiltonians. And squaring that circle is a difficult challenge for political operators.